The following is for information purposes only and should not be considered investment advice. All opinions and views expressed by the contributors to this podcast are in a personal capacity only. They do not represent the views of Progressive Equity Research or any other organisation mentioned in this podcast.
Okay, it is Thursday, the 28th of August. Jeremy, welcome back. Good to have you here.
Hi, Gareth. Yeah, good to be here.
So it's been a short week, had a lovely bank holiday with fantastic weather in the UK, but interested to know what you think's been going on more broadly. Where's the States been this week?
Well, while we were enjoying the long weekend, Trump had a busy weekend doing what he does best and disrupting US institutions. And this time he's been having a go at one of the Fed governors, adding fuel to the smouldering embers left from the previous week's Jackson Hole fears that Jay Powell is suffering from Stockholm syndrome. And that Trump is now going after Fed board member Lisa Cook, who he thinks he's dismissed, but she is taking him to court. And the only certain outcome from which is a further undermining of confidence in US institutions and the confidence in the dollar, basically.
Yeah.
The dollar has weakened. The long bond yields have risen, both key signs of falling confidence. But to be fair, these have been quite small. We're not anywhere near the realms of the fallout seen in April following Liberation Day.
No, it's true. Although it does feel like we're moving in the direction of a sort of an emerging market style dictatorial economy, and undermining of confidence, I think is the right word.
Yeah.
But I guess that kind of confidence, you can chip away and chip away and chip away at it. And then one day it just breaks.
Yeah. But there's been a new feature in the political crisis area this week as well. So there have been heightened country risk fears emerging from France. Prime Minister Bayrou has only been in office for 9 months and is now threatened by a vote of no confidence. And that's heightened the global concerns around longer duration bonds. So French bond spreads relative to German bunds have widened. So yeah, that's another area that investors have some sort of concern over, I guess, as well.
That's right. It's interesting to see Europe's not immune from all of these concerns. And how about the UK? Where's the UK been as all this has been playing out around us?
Well, of course, if there's any sort of fiscal crisis going around, then you can't really leave out the UK. So,
no, we should be at the table. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, don't worry, we're involved. And if you read headlines this week, specifically coming from the Telegraph, there's been open speculation around the prospect of Rachel Reeves being forced into the arms of the IMF for a bailout before the autumn budget. So there's lots of analogies being drawn to Dennis Healy's cap-in-hand visit to the IMF in 1976. But if there is an imminent sterling crisis about to hit the UK, no one's told the currency market this week because the pound's literally risen over the week relative to the dollar. So I don't want to sound like Michael Fish in 1987, I think it was.
No storm coming. Yeah,
there's no storm coming, but
right.
The official forecast is that the pound sterling's doing okay, thank you. But I think investors do have genuine concerns, and I think these concerns have been heightened this week by the appointment of the Labour MP and left-wing think tanker Torsten Bell into Reeves's team for drawing up the budget. This does represent a shift to sort of doubling down on tax increases as the way forward. Torsten Bell has a record on these things, and in that backdrop, given where the UK stock market is and where the currency is and where bond yields are, as we've said before, it's a bit of a long haul through the third and fourth quarter of this year.
Yeah, certainly feels that way. Okay, so bond yields are increasing, especially at the long end. Sterling's not collapsing. What about other markets or other stocks or commodities around the place?
Yeah, so generally speaking, yield curves have been steepening. Over the last week, oil prices have been largely unchanged, but actually quite volatile as the market mood changes. I think particularly around China, is it in recovery mode? Its stock market would suggest that it is, but we haven't really seen the supportive economic data just yet. Gold price has risen. The S&P's up 2%. FTSE was pretty flat over the week. The US 10-year yield has actually fallen 10 basis points. UK gilt yields were pretty flat. And as we said, pound was actually up on the week. So, I mean, things moving around, but no real discernible trends. And history would tell you that if we are about to have some form of crisis, whether it's a sterling crisis, some sort of market correction, they typically come in the third quarter of the year.
Not quite there yet. Yeah. I suppose one thing that could have catalysed that would have been Nvidia. They had results this week. And I guess there would have been some worries that if they'd come up with a much more cautious or sort of doom-laden set of either results or outlook, that could have been something which would kick off a dramatic retracement in global markets. But that doesn't seem to have happened. It was slightly cautious on the outlook, but the results themselves seemed to be pretty strong, albeit stronger in the less AI-focused areas. So it wasn't exactly the style of revenue people were looking for. But overall, still a very strong set of numbers, and outlook was cautious but not overly cautious, so it sort of feels like it's been taken relatively okay.
Yeah, and I think in terms of the market setup into these results, while Nvidia and the Mag 7 have all recovered strongly, we had a bout of weakness on the back of this sort of MIT paper suggesting that overinvestment in AI was sort of broadly similar to the fiber build out, the secondary telecoms boom of the late 1990s. Now, there was nothing in the Nvidia update to indicate the veracity of that kind of thinking one way or the other. But as you say, it was a bit of a dampener, but nothing major. So yeah, again, no real direction, I would say.
No. And if we're looking for reasons to be relaxed or confident about the market's overall positioning, the fact that we got through that without too much of a dislocation is probably not a bad thing. It's in some ways quite reassuring.
I'd agree with that.
So the renewables space is one thing which you've been looking at this week. What do you want to say about renewables? There's a bit going on there.
I mean, I think this is an area that does seem to be showing risk warnings and signs of investor fatigue. And it's indicative of the degree to which governments have the capacity or the inclination, depending where you are, to continue to fund renewable energy projects. So basically, in other Trump news, he pretty well ran roughshod over Danish wind giant Ørsted's plans to refinance itself. What he did was cancel a major US offshore wind project that by all accounts was 80% complete. But he did this while Ørsted was in mid-fundraising. I think it's already warned 2 or 3 times in the last 2 or 3 years. Its share price has fallen well over 90% from its peak of 3 or 4 years ago. And I think this is one of several emerging straws in the wind, so to speak, regarding the sort of emerging cost to the world for what I would term as net zero absolutism. And thanks to our friend in the White House, some of the absurdities of policies that we have been pursuing in this area from a financial perspective are coming to light. So along with Ørsted, we also had news that in Japan, Mitsubishi has withdrawn from 3 offshore wind projects that are of a similar proportion of the sort of renewable energy future for Japan as the Ørsted offshore project was for the US. And in addition to this week, we've seen in the UK news from Ofgem that the UK electricity price cap, which is a very sensitive political issue, is rising due to the cost of subsidising wind energy and inefficiency of our use of wind energy on days when, ironically, the wind is blowing. But this is, I think, the makings of a financing bubble that has been supported by regulation and taxation and subsidization, particularly in Europe, and something that I think is becoming increasingly apparent to more and more people who are being asked to pay the cost directly and indirectly for this policy to actually take stock.
No, well, you're right. Governments, the UK included, have got some pretty difficult decisions to make. And subsidising or funding these kind of projects surely will be somewhere on the list of cost cutting.
Without wishing to be too political, I would say most people in this country would say we can't afford it. And that is probably before most people know the actual true cost.
Yeah.
This whole area of renewable energy raised its head in a slightly different area in the UK this morning, in fact, where we saw that Drax is being investigated by the FCA for allegedly misleading its shareholders and its regulator over the source of its biomass, i.e. wood pellets, that it burns instead of coal these days, which raises the prospect of greater scrutiny of the underlying thesis that burning wood rather than burning coal or burning gas makes sense, certainly in a region that is short of energy and being such phenomenally high prices for its energy, whether this makes any sense at all.
You're right. I mean, they would say that a lot of the wood pellets, or maybe all of them, should be coming from offcuts or bits of trees that have already been cut down or already being used for other purposes. So it's a very plentiful and low environmental impact source of that wood. But yes, your broader point is that simply by drawing attention to this, it's going to get a lot of focus on the premise that to take these spare bits of wood, if that's what they are, pelletize them, put them in ships and ship them across the Atlantic to burn them here and claim that that's greener than LNG or coal.
Yeah. I think particularly, put it in the UK context where we were saying earlier, our fiscal situation, which is calling for much higher taxes or for welfare cuts or both, I think there's going to be increasing pressure for major rethink of some of these policies.
Okay, we'll keep an eye on that over the coming weeks and months. What about the coming days? Have we got much over the next week or so to look forward to?
So we've got US core PCE data for July tomorrow afternoon, which is maybe not as critical as before the Powell speech from Jackson Hole last week, because where he made it pretty clear that they will be cutting pretty well regardless of the data. He didn't actually put it that way, but I think that's how most people took it. However, if it's a blowout spike to inflationary pressure at this late stage, then that could cause a rethink. We get some Chinese manufacturing data and some EU inflation data next week. The EU inflation looks like it's going to be trending pretty well onto target. We've got some US PMI services surveys and that don't look too significant really, but it's jobs week next week. And as ever, that culminates in the non-farm payrolls on Friday and the release of the unemployment data. Now, last month, of course, we had the head of the Bureau of Labour Statistics losing their job because these numbers weren't up to Trump's expectations.
Yeah.
So let's see this time. But there is genuine and real concern, I think, for the veracity of much of economic data, but in particular employment data in the US and in the UK. And particularly what I think upset Trump and is most debated among economists are the revisions to the historic payroll data. So Friday's figure seems to be for a figure between 50 and 75,000 versus the 73,000 last time. So broadly unchanged. But there's going to be as much focus on the revision to the historic data as for the number itself, bearing in mind that the numbers for May and June were revised so significantly downward, they're almost in negative territory. So a further revision could reveal that from an employment perspective, the US is effectively been in a recession for 2 or 3 months now. And that, I think, could lead to sharper trajectory of rate cutting in the US than the market is currently factoring in. So it's going to be interesting whether, say, a 50 basis point cut in the policy rate, what the long bond yields would do. I suspect they might spike up, and I think that would be a concern for everybody.
It would, because I guess Trump will want the 50 basis point rate cut, but what he won't want is the negative headlines around the job market.
Yes, it's going to be a delicate path to tread, yes.
Yeah. Great. Okay. Well, lots to look forward to. And I'm sure there'll be more shenanigans in Trump land, and we can discuss those this time next week. Been great to catch up, Jeremy. Good to speak to you.
Okay.
And I'll see you next Friday. Talk to you then.
Good to talk. Bye.
Brought to you by Progressive Equity.